Miami will play for a national championship, and it's because of the 7th year Carson Beck.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to a live reaction episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, the number one sports podcast network out there. I thank you all, especially my everydayers, for helping make that the case. Carson Beck delivers the drive of the century for the Miami Hurricanes, who are going to play for a national championship. Did not think I would say that sentence when the season began, as the season got going. Did I think Miami would win this game? Indeed, I did. Indeed, I did. But that's not what I want to talk about here. Carson Beck has taken his fair share of flack. And one of the reasons that I felt Miami was going to win this game was Ole Miss's defense hadn't played great, and Trinidad Chambliss kept having to bail them out, and he did everything that he could. The Miami game plan to keep him contained as a runner and as a scrambler, 5 carries for 7 yards in this one. The Miami defense totaled just 1 sack, but they did something that I mentioned, kind of that mush rush, mud rush, whatever you want to call it, the contain rushes. They executed that part of their defensive game plan to perfection. And when Trinidad Chambliss started making plays, they had to have an answer on the other side. And who was that answer? Carson Beck. And I didn't think the Miami offense was only as good as what they had shown in the playoffs so far. They'd gone against Ohio State, a great defense. They'd gone against Texas A&M after a pretty long layoff on the road. And that's a really good defense. And I felt like Miami was the more complete team. I think we saw that in this game. Oh, what do you know? Miami ran for more yards than Ole Miss and wound up winning the football game. Wow, who could have foreseen? Maybe my best stat prediction of the year was Mark Fletcher goes over 120. He finished his 22 carries, 133 yards. Kewan Lacey on the other side had just 11 carries for 103 yards and a touchdown. Will Rebel fans be asking themselves, why didn't he get more touches in the game? I'm sure some will find a way to do it, but you scored 27 points. More often than not, that's been good enough. But Carson Beck, when everything was on the line, your college football career, your national title hopes, an opportunity to knock out the SEC, who, again, won't play for a national championship. I have more thoughts on that coming later in the show. Carson Beck marched them right down the field, and he made big throw after big throw. The 3rd and 4 to CJ Daniels. The 3rd and 10 to Keelan Marion. Big time throws, and then, of course, he scrambles his way in. He's not a great runner, but you know what he is? Experience. And the experience of Carson Beck showed up when they had to have a touchdown in order to take the lead. Sure, field goal's in your pocket, but boy, in that moment, you don't want that game to go to overtime. That would have, of course, felt like and perhaps literally led to a win for Ole Miss. And what does Carson Beck do? Didn't force the ball. Didn't turn the ball over, aside from the 1 interception. But didn't come out of that drive. He didn't come out of the zone that he was in. Dude was just dialed. Trinidad Chambliss, what an incredible fourth quarter. 25 points scored, 4 lead changes. Ole Miss has the greatest kicker this side of, what's the guy for the Cam Little. Cam Little for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I mean, Lucas Carnero, 58 yards like it was nothing. Like it was nothing in this game. But Ole Miss made enough plays to win, and Carson Beck just made one more. And that one more play was a product of 2 things, which were reasons why I liked Miami to win the game. Number 1, the Miami offensive line. The entire drive was giving Carson Beck an eternity to throw the football. And so he had the opportunity to sit back there, slice and dice, move in the pocket when he had to. He almost made a horrific throwaway that could have been, I don't know if could have been, but was almost intercepted, closer than it should have been. If you're going to throw it away, chuck it into row 7, my man. But he converted a third down and then converted another third down. And then didn't force the ball, looks left and goes, wait a minute, that's man coverage, and everybody flowed in this direction. And he waltzed into the end zone. He's waited his entire college career for that moment. He's been around for a very long time. Miami paid a lot of money for him in the offseason to make him their starting quarterback. And guess what? Dude was just worth every single dollar. Whether you win the national championship or not, whether you face Oregon, which would be absolute cinema, or Indiana, which would be its own version of an incredible matchup, Carson Beck was absolutely worth it in that particular moment. I felt like in the last couple games, he'd been carried a bit. But in this game, it was the Miami defense that couldn't make the stops. It's hard to sack Trinidad Chambliss. Dude runs around, and even for Ruben Bain, he's hard to get to. Even for Hakeem Mesidor, he's hard to get to. Neither one of those guys had a sack in this game. Imagine if I told you that. Going into this matchup, hey, you're not going to have any sacks from those two guys. I wouldn't have been that concerned because I was more thinking about the pressure rate and how they would keep him in the pocket, and Chambliss responded. Chambliss is an absolute baller, and I don't know if he'll get another year of eligibility and come back to Ole Miss. I hope he does. I hope he does. He is a fun football player to watch. He is an incredible story. Austin Simmons transferred out. I hope Trinidad Chambliss gets another year of eligibility. And I know some folks will say, hang it up, get a job. Go. Chambliss was playing for Ferris State last year, won a national championship, almost had Ole Miss in the national championship game. I mean, incredible story. I'm going to come back to Ole Miss a little bit later on. But the Miami offense was missing that next gear, and they got Malachi Toney. Incredible run on the screen pass. He had an incredible first down earlier in the game where it looked like he was going to get tackled. That dude should be in high school, and yet he is Miami's best receiver. And in the national championship game, I can tell you right now, getting CJ Daniels involved in the offense is going to be a really important thing for the Hurricane. Because whether you are going against Indiana and their brilliant scheme or Oregon and their incredibly talented and productive secondary, you're going to need more than just one weapon. CJ Daniels has to get going. And in this game, 4 catches, 26 yards, it really wasn't him. It was Keelan Marion that got going. One of those guys. I should have said one of those guys has to get going. Well, someone other than Malachi Toney got going, and it was Keelan Marion. He also drew a 15-yard penalty on that game-winning 15-play drive. I mean, you talk about the stuff of legends. The execution, getting your protections right, making the right play calls, making the right reads, making the right throws. Carson Beck showed how experienced he is. Carson Beck showed how worth the money he was. And Miami, nobody's happier than Michael Irvin is going to play for a national championship. Didn't think I'd say it before the year, but alas, here we are. So leave your thoughts in the comments below. Hit me up on Twitter, all of that good stuff, however you want to get in touch. What do we do now with our good friends at Ole Miss? Well, several thoughts there. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at Rocket Money. Let's be real. Managing your finances can feel overwhelming. Between subscriptions you forgot about, bills that keep going up, trying to figure out where all your money actually goes each month, it's easy to feel like you're losing control. And who has time to track every transaction or hunt down hidden fees? That's where Rocket Money comes in, the personal finance app that helps you take control. It finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. So the automatic transaction categorization is a game changer. I know that was a mouthful to hear. I'll say it again, but slower. Automatic transaction categorization. You'll finally be able to see exactly where your money's going each month. You can set budgets and goals, get personalized insights, and receive real-time alerts for large transactions, upcoming bills, and low balances. So Whatever your financial goal is, Rocket Money's here to help you get there. Let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/lockedon. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All caps, all one word. It's that simple. Get going. Check them out today. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All right. Ole Miss is one of my favorite stories from the last several years. I mean, the adversity that locker room and that coaching staff had to overcome to have been on the doorstep of the national championship game is easily one of the 5 most incredible things I've watched in the last couple of years. Their coach bailed on them, said no. Full on, this is appropriate coming from me, Sid from Toy Story approach. I don't want to play with you no more. He was done. He's going to a place where it's better. And hey, they got Eugene Wilson from Florida, really talented receiver. I mean, they don't actually know who their quarterback's going to be, and we know it won't be Trinidad Chambliss, even if he does get approved. So, there's that component. But anyway, let's overlook that for now. What Ole Miss just did, regardless of how you feel about the Rebels, Lane Kiffin, or the SEC, anything like that, I hope we can all appreciate the incredible story that was the Ole Miss Rebels this year. I mean, to knock off Georgia, the SEC champs, when you trailed by 2 possessions in the second half, after you led 2 possessions in the second half at their place, I tell you what, that takes some sort of intestinal fortitude. And when the move was initially made, I'll admit, I had questions about whether Pete Golding was the convenient hire or the only hire or whether he was the right hire. He showed you in this run. He's the right hire. He's ready to be a head coach because what he did with that locker room to get them ready to play and have them playing at such a high level throughout the course of this run, nothing short of incredible. And look, maybe we'll look back one day and say, I was lightning in a bottle. He rode the momentum, and once he stopped having Lane Kiffin to point at, it really didn't take off. That's possible. So there's always that possibility. It just doesn't feel that way. And I think the priority for him will certainly be to improve on the defensive side of the ball because he's a defensive guy. He was, I believe, still calling the plays for Ole Miss's defense. It might have been somebody else, but he's obviously very involved with all of that. And it was the Ole Miss defense that ultimately let him down. And I am heartbroken for Trinidad Chambliss because that guy's story is also incredible. And he did everything he could. And then at the end of the game, gave them a reasonable chance to pull off a Hail Mary. And I know there was pushing and pulling and tugging and all that sort of stuff. On a Hail Mary, I don't think that anyone's got just cause to be upset at a flag that should have been thrown on a Hail Mary play. I think flags can be thrown in basically every Hail Mary play. It's a difficult play to officiate. Guys are pushing, pulling, shoving. It's got to be pretty egregious, and I'm sure some people think it was, but if it comes down to that, you got to go back to how you put yourself in that situation. And sure, it definitely sucks to look back and see that your kicker, who is absolutely incredible, did miss a field goal in the game, and you wound up losing by 4. And Chambliss, with 1 timeout in 18 seconds, got them into field goal range. I mean, there was a part of me that was watching the end of that game with how crazy the fourth quarter had been, and I thought to myself, I think Trinidad Chambliss could do this. If anyone was going to do it, it was going to be him, right? If there was going to be a player in college football that somehow got Ole Miss into the end zone, going 75 yards in 18 seconds, it was going to be Trinidad Chambliss, right? The dude has made every single play when called upon. He's done everything that's been asked of him. He said all the right things. He said he wants to come back to Ole Miss. I hope somebody approves his waiver. I really do. I am not in the camp of, man, you can't have all these old guys out there. There are definitely examples where it's gone too far. I don't think Chambliss is one of those guys. And frankly, even if I had that rule as a blanket statement, I would overlook it because I want to see Chambliss play college football again. Dude's just fun to watch. He's absolutely, positively electric. So should Ole Miss have run the ball in this game more? I don't know that you can really make that case. I think if you just didn't watch the game and went through the box score, You'd say, well, man, why didn't they give it to him more? Well, can you really argue with 27 points? No. Ultimately, it comes down to one of the kicks was missed, and the defense couldn't get the stop when they needed to. And they had their chances. But the offense delivered. The offense was clutch. And, yeah, they scored 0 points in the first quarter. Well, they only gave up 3. So I think this was just an outstanding football game. And, look, I'm somebody that has opposed the expansion of the college football playoff before. Something that I have always admitted is the games are likely to be fun. I did not think we'd see a team like Miami make a run like this so soon into the 12-team era. I think it will be used as justification for expansion of the playoff further because, well, hey, Miami barely got in. And what about teams that got left out? Notre Dame could have made a run if they'd done all of this. I have thoughts on that in the third segment coming as well. But the run that Ole Miss and Miami were there, 10-6, had a little March Madness feel. You're looking at those seeds and going, boy, it's not what I filled out in my bracket, and it wasn't what I filled out in my bracket either. I thought Ohio State was going to come into this bracket and get it done. I think Indiana is going to win the national championship. But I've doubted Miami before. Didn't in this game. Did not in this game. Because trench play ultimately prevailed. And that was really the biggest difference, is Trinidad Chambliss was contained, still productive, but you're never going to take away a guy who's as talented and in as good of a rhythm coming into the game as Trinidad Chambliss was. So I think Miami did a pretty reasonable job containing him in that regard. And Carson Beck had his best game of the playoff. Why? Because he wasn't consistently under pressure. And yeah, the tipped interception, huge. Big moment in the game. Great for Ole Miss's defense. But when your backs were up against the wall and you had to have a stop, and if you'd gotten one, you go to the national championship game, when you were that close. Carson Beck was pressured, once in that entire drive, maybe twice. And I really felt like those pressures were actually more of a function of no one was open down the field. And eventually, yeah, sure, guys are going to get home and Carson Beck is going to leave the pocket, and that's going to create angles for the defensive linemen to go and be able to chase him down. But if you look at the game-winning touchdown, Miami's offensive line just way better than the Ole Miss defensive line. I mean, you give up 133 yards on 6 yards of carry to Miami's number one back, and Carson Beck was sacked 4 times in the game. I know that those numbers look good, but going back to the point that I made earlier, I'm far less concerned with sack numbers than I am pressure rate. Can you get there when it counts? And Ole Miss could not. And you also have to credit Miami's game plan, which isn't something most folks, myself included, would expect to hear on a show like this and many others when talking about a Mario Cristobal team. But you know what Ole Miss looked like? They were worn down. They looked like a defense that just did not have a lot left in the tank compared to the start of the game. Because Miami just wore you down. There's a lot of Michigan to Miami. They're kind of Michigan light. I think they've got a more capable passing game than the Wolverines did when they won it all with J.J. McCarthy. And Carson Beck, I think, is a better actual passer. They've got a couple of good weapons. We saw, of course, Keelan Marion break out, and Malachi Toney is great. And I think that their ability to just go on these long drives that just wear you down physically and wear you down mentally, I think that proved to be the difference. And that's what Ole Miss was lacking. They couldn't get off the field when they needed to. Miami ran the ball too well, and they just stayed on the field. And they just said, we're just going to cut down the possessions. We don't want to get into a track meet with Trinidad Chambliss, because why would you? Dude might be the most capable quarterback in the country of playing that sort of game. So you got to credit Miami and their staff. Mario Cristobal's hired really well. Shannon Dawson's a great OC. And Corey Heatherman, defensive coordinator. If not for Bryant Haynes at Indiana, Heatherman would be my vote for the Broyles Award. They don't give me a vote, but I'm just saying who I would vote for. But it should be Bryant Haynes at Indiana. So keep leaving your thoughts in the YouTube comments. Hit me up on Twitter, however you want to get in touch. But I want to applaud Ole Miss because that was just such a difficult circumstance to be in. For them to have gotten to that point, absolutely awesome to watch. You know who can't be happy watching all this? I will tell you. After I tell you this episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, the college football playoff is here. Only 2 games left. The semifinal at the Peach Bowl, Oregon, Indiana, and the national championship. And FanDuel is giving all customers even more ways to get in on the action every single game day of the playoffs. Because right now, every college football playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost waiting for them in the app. So, my picks have not been particularly sharp on the season. Got this one right. Got Oregon, Texas Tech rep, but plenty of others wrong in this college football playoff. And I think Oregon is going to lose to Indiana. I think Indiana is going to win and cover the 3.5. I just think Curt Cignetti is that guy. Indiana just feels like that sort of team. If you think, hey, wait a minute, Spencer got one right in the Miami game, certainly that means he's getting this one wrong. Oregon in the points. Then perhaps you'd like Oregon plus 3.5. If you agree with me that Indiana is just a wagon and a team of destiny and Oregon's banged up and their coordinators or head coaches elsewhere, well then perhaps you'd like Indiana minus 3.5. Whatever you want, FanDuel has got you covered. And don't forget about the playoff game days because you get a profit boost on the college football playoff game days, which there are only 2 left for. So FanDuel's the best place to get in on the action all playoff long. Visit FanDuel.com to get your college football playoff profit boosts every game day. Check them out at FanDuel.com. So, 2 other takeaways here with Miami going to the national championship. Number 1, it is a rough day to be Paul Feinbaum and the SEC homers, who even the other day had to admit the SEC hasn't been very good in the playoff. I have been beating this drum for quite a while. No, I haven't come on here and tell you that the SEC is a crap conference who stinks across the board and they've always been overrated. I've pointed out what once again proves to be true. That was my number 1 storyline in the entire sport coming into this year. This is 3 straight years. This has not happened this century. And we're over a quarter away into the century, by the way. 3 straight years. Not that the SEC hasn't won a national championship. They haven't played in the game. There is a new king in college football, and it's the Big Ten. And the SEC still has a bunch of really good teams. But I haven't seen the great teams. Ole Miss is a great story and a really good team. They're not a dominant team. Georgia's the SEC champ. They got bounced in the quarterfinals again. I hope we change the format so they don't have such a long layoff. I hear you on that. Indiana didn't seem to mind. They beat Alabama by 35. 3 years in a row that the SEC is sitting as a conference at home watching the national championship just like you and me. It's the new world of college football. The top of the sport and the middle of the sport, it's come down. There's still a gap. It's nowhere near where it used to be. Nowhere near. The SEC does not run college football anymore. The inherent bias that often gets given to that particular league is not warranted. There have been times over the years where I felt like it was, where I felt like it went overboard. Now, I don't know what rationalization you would use. The conference can't even get to the SEC championship game. In the last couple of years, granted, Georgia lost to an SEC team this year who couldn't get by a team that, wait for it, couldn't make the ACC championship game. That's a tough look. That is a tough look. But 2 years in a row, the SEC champion, not in the national championship. I have been a critic of the 12-team playoff. It makes the SEC prove it on the field more. So at least there's that. And it just, what is it? Does it just mean more? I don't know what it means now. Perhaps they should change their slogan. It might still mean more. Maybe it's just more disappointment. Maybe it's just more frustration. Maybe it's just more screaming at the sky. I don't believe the SEC will fail to win a national championship forever. I don't think they're going to go on a Big 12 level drought that hasn't won one since Texas won it with Vince Young. And oh, by the way, Texas is now, of course, a member of the SEC. I don't think that's what we're looking at. But this is a big enough sample size for me to say, yeah, okay, it's official. The SEC doesn't run college football anymore. We've been getting a lot of data points, 2 national championships in a row. Well, but Michigan, okay, all right. Even if you want to go down that particular road. Notably, SEC schools never pushed the rules back in the day. But all right, let's say throw that one out. So, which I'm not. But again, that would still be 2 years in a row. NIL and the portal have changed things. I think the portal more than anything else doesn't allow the SEC teams to stack talent. It allows players like Trinidad Chambliss or Diego Pavia or Fernando Mendoza at Indiana to change the sport in ways that just weren't previously available to schools. And a lot of programs have been able to take advantage of that. And what Curt Cignetti has done, not available without the portal. So I think that's been the biggest impact. I'm not saying the 12-team playoff has not changed some things, but the power structure in college football, yeah, that's changed because, and remember, if we'd kept it a 4-team playoff, the 4 teams this year, 2 Big Ten, Georgia is the SEC champ, and Texas Tech is the Big 12 champ. And I think we know Indiana would probably, I'd like to see the game, but I feel pretty good saying that Indiana would have beaten Texas Tech, and then Ohio State would have played Georgia. We were supposed to get that game. Instead, they had to go through other opponents who they were favored against, and they both wound up losing the football game. So that angle of it is fun. Here's the second thing. I remember not long ago when there was plenty of discussion going around the college football world about how teams are just not going to schedule quality non-conference games anymore. Miami is the shining example of why you do it. If Miami had said, nah, to hell with Notre Dame, let's play Cupcake State instead, which, by the way, because teams, inexplicably, control their own schedule in college football, could have absolutely happened, Miami would not have been in the playoff, and Notre Dame would have had a chance to make a run like this. But it is because, not in spite of, Miami scheduling the Notre Dame game and winning it, that they are going to go play for a national championship. And that, fundamentally, in my view, is good for the sport. Because I don't just want to see those games continue to get played. I want them to have meaning. I'm not happy about the fact that BYU was left out of the playoff. I am not. I approach college football differently from a mindset standpoint than most people out there. I can still hold that opinion, which I do. BYU had a better record and a better conference with better strength of schedule. They were punished for playing in a conference championship game. Miami getting in over Notre Dame is still a positive for the sport because they played Notre Dame and beat them, and it mattered. That is what we have to never lose sight of. That's enough to wrap today's show. There'll be another one tomorrow on, drama. Appreciate everyone listening. See you next time. Until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.